barring a couple of mistakes. But if you've learnt music, you will know about counterpoint. Basically, if the melody is the main theme, then the counterpoint is an alternative melody that runs underneath the main tune. Anyone who's sung parts in a choir will know that alternative melodies can do very strange things. On the one hand, they can sound jarring and unexpected, even ugly. But when the counterpoint is set together with the melody, then that's when the harmonies appear. And if they're done well, then there's a beauty that will add to the melody. Now, I'm talking about this because coming out of our series on Proverbs and into Ecclesiastes, we're dealing with melody and counterpoint in ancient Hebrew wisdom. Now, the ancient writers decided that we needed both parts so we could hear the harmony of wisdoms. So if Proverbs is the melody, it invites us to give the Lord God his worth in all things, to avoid foolishness and to love wisdom so we can pursue the grace of God. If it holds out to us the promise of how to do life successfully, then Ecclesiastes is the counter melody underneath. And when we play it on its own, it can sound jarring and unexpected and ugly, a tune that's really difficult to hear. But every musical theme in Ecclesiastes can be found in other parts of the Bible. In the New Testament, as we looked at last week, but especially in the wisdom literature. So what has happened in Ecclesiastes is that the counterpoint, the alternative melody, has been given the space to become the main tune. And it's been given that space so that we can hear the themes that other parts of the Bible contain even more clearly. And for some of us, it'll mean hearing those themes for the first time, and they will surprise us. So let me give you some examples of how this counterpoint works. In Proverbs 1, you remember there was a plea to avoid the foolishness of falling in with violent people. But in Ecclesiastes, we get the counterpoint to that. Ecclesiastes says we live in a world where we may become the victims of violence through no fault of our own. Or and Proverbs teaches again and again about the moral rhythm that God built into life. And we talked about how that acts like a force of nature, and wisdom is about learning how to recognize and navigate that force well. How to surf the waves that God sends. So in Proverbs 21, verse 29, there is no wisdom, there is no plan that can succeed against the Lord. And Proverbs celebrates that. But then we get to Ecclesiastes 3 and we get a counterpoint to the same thing. That this rhythm, this quiet inevitability that God builds into his creation can be a source of frustration that also humbles us. So Ecclesiastes speaks of the same things as Proverbs does, but flips them over so we can consider the other side. Now, it is a surprise for us that the Bible should do this to us. Especially, it's sharp for those of us who have been raised and educated in the Western world. Because ever since the humiliations of World War I, when Western empires tore each other apart, Western thought has been either embracing or running from the idea that ultimately our lives are meaningless. Now, that has either led to depression and fatalism, or to distraction through materialism or amusements, or nowadays even through the thoughtless outrage. And we see this in our films and in our books, in our editorials, and we read it on social media all the time. This swing between, on the one hand, godless bleakness, and on the other hand, joyless indulgence. But Ecclesiastes surprises us Westerners. The teacher concludes that the wisest way to live with meaninglessness is not on the edge of despair or thoughtless distraction, but with the determination to honour God and pursue the joy that he offers in our daily lives. That's the counterpoint of Ecclesiastes wisdom. The cat is helping me preach the sermon right now. Come here, lad. I'm not quite sure if that was a moan of despair or distraction.